Hi YouTube, I got this Husqvarna 125B leaf blower off of Craigslist, and the previous owner said it didn't work and hasn't worked in a while. So I bought it back to the shop, and I got it working. And I wanted to share with you what I learned. So first thing, the spark, there was no spark on it. So let me show you what I had to do to fix it. First of all, I took off the tube just to be able to work on it better. And in order to get the case open, I think there's 7 screws here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you remove those 7 screws. I've already done that just to save some time. And so if you remove those screws, the starter comes off, and then the plastic housing. All right. And then this part comes off also. Okay, so now you could sort of see the engine and the starting system here, and two things generally could go wrong if you're seeing no spark. First of all, the kill switch could be busted. But I tested the kill switch with a multimeter, and that it was working. I'll link to another video that shows you exactly how to test this switch with a multimeter. And then I sort of then spent time looking at this coil. And again, I could link to another YouTube video that shows how to test this coil with a multimeter. And I determined that the coil was busted. So I ordered a new one, and when I installed it, I still got no spark. And the reason was that the gap between the flywheel here and the coil was too big. I used a normal business card, and I've generally always used business cards for things like this, but that turned out to be too thick. So I had to make it a little bit thinner than business card size, and I actually used 2 pieces of copy paper. So just imagine any old, Xerox copy paper, just two sheets of that, and that gap thickness worked for me. So regular business cards did not work, but that gap did. And so so here's the part numbers that I used to solve it. The coil that I got was part number 545-10810, and again the gap from the coil to the flywheel was 2 sheets of copy paper, and for me that worked. And I looked up on the internet, that's around 0.2 millimeters. Along the way, I also replaced the spark plug, and the spark plug here is a Champion RCJ6Y. The gap on that spark plug is 0.24 inches, and it uses, by the way, a 19 millimeter hex, which means you really want to have a 3/4 sized spark plug socket in order to do with it. So anyway, after I did this, I got the spark to happen. And so next, it still wouldn't work though. So then I paid attention to the fuel system. And in order to see the fuel system better, why don't I turn this? Why don't I first remove the air filter cover? There you go, and here's the air filter. And I recommend, if you're going to sort of renovate an old machine, to maybe get a clean air filter. And in order to remove the air filter cover, there are 2 screws here. You're going to want a 8 millimeter socket with some sort of extension to reach in and remove the screws. I've already done that. So when you if you do that though, you can remove the filter and then really start to see the fuel system. And as you can see, you have a purge bulb, and lines going to a carburetor, and then lines going into the fuel tank over here. You can see it. And so that's kind of hard to to see. So what I've done is I've created a schematic, which I hope is helpful, for how to set up the fuel lines. So let's start here from the fuel tank. So inside the fuel tank, you're going to want a new fuel filter, and then the fuel filter, you're going to want a line that's 6 inches long to go to the carb, and the input of the carb is this little metal pipe that's kind of near the choke lever. From there, the fuel will go through the carb and will exit through a little metal pipe that's near the high and low speed adjusting screws. And then you want a 5-inch fuel line that goes into the purge bulb, and it'll go to the short input. The short, there are two, there's an input and output of a purge bulb, and one part of plastic is much shorter than the other, so it goes into the short, and then a line comes from out of the longer one, and it needs to be around 8 inches long, 6 inches to the top of the fuel tank, and then 2 inches into the fuel tank. So once again, here's the settings. Fuel filter to carb is 6 inches, carb to bulb is 5 inches, bulb to tank is 8 inches, and these are the lengths of the fuel line. The type of fuel line you want, by the way, has a 3/32 inside diameter and a 3/16 outside diameter. And a fuel line, you know, when you get fuel line, it'll look like this. The way it works here is your push. This is a purge bulb, not a primer. So what's happening is, let's see if we could see it now. You could push this bulb 100 times, and you'll not flood the engine, because it's really just cycling fuel from the fuel tank through the carburetor and then back into the fuel tank. And a properly functioning fuel system. Here, let's just remove the fuel cap. And by the way, I recommend that you also clean the breather hole for the fuel cap to make this, to make this work right. And if you could sort of look inside there, you could see what it looks like when I press. I'm just pressing the purge bulb, and you can see fuel kind of shooting out. That's what a properly set up fuel system is going to look like and feel like. So you should see sort of a lot of fuel inside the purge bulb. You can see all that fuel in there, and you'll see fuel coming out of the exit. And you could press that 100 times and not worry about flooding the engine. So I had to change some fuel lines because they were cracked, and I had to change the fuel filter because it was bad. But once I set it up, it was much better. So I set it up, I put it back together, and I ran it, but it still wasn't very happy. So then I had to go into this carb, and I'll create a link to another video that shows how to adjust, or how to clean, or how to replace, sorry, the gaskets and the diaphragm in the carb. But for me, the big problem was this metering diaphragm, and you want this to be really supple. It shouldn't make a cracking noise when this goes up and down. And if you can listen carefully, this is really crunchy, and it's not supposed to sound like that. It should really go in and out really smooth. So I had to replace this, and when I did, it was much happier. And again, I will link to another video that shows in really good detail how to do that. So the last thing that had to happen in order to make this run well is I had to adjust the the screw, the carburetor screws. And you're going to see here 3 screws that you're going to adjust. This is the low speed jet, the high speed jet, and the idle screw. Okay, and these are the locations. In order to adjust these screws, at least the high speed and low speed jet, you're going to need this sort of tool here. It's called a spined 21T tool, and you can see there's, I think, 21 little teeth in it. But you're going to need that to adjust it. And here I have another diagram to show how I adjusted my screws. So, and just by the way, the carb that's on at least my machine is a Zama C1Q37 carburetor, and the rebuild kit, in order to get the diaphragm and the gaskets, you know, the replacement of this thing here, is the RB47, the Zama RB47 rebuild kit. And that has all the kind of metal. It has an extra purge bulb and lots of other kind of metal parts and springs, etc. But if you just want the gassing and diaphragm, you can get the Zama GND18 kit. Okay, and so what are the settings that for the low and high speed jet that worked for me? This is what I had to do. For the low speed jet, from the all the way down position, I had to back it back up 2 turns. And then for the high speed jet, from the all the way down position, I had to back it up a little bit under 2 turns, 1 7/8. And then for the idle screw, from the all the way down position, I had to back it up 1 turn. And I think if you use these settings, that will be a kind of a starting point to tune your engine. I will also put another link to another YouTube video that shows a really good example of how to tune these engines by sound. And but these initial settings I'm giving you will give you a good starting point for those manual settings. So overall, that's what I really did. I mean, you know, to get the engine going, you want spark, air, fuel, and compression. There is compression here on the engine, and I had to once again change the coil. I had to change the fuel lines, get them all aligned right. I had to put a new fuel filter in, and then I had to really kind of adjust the carburetor settings. But now it runs great. So why don't I put this back together and we'll show you how it runs. Okay, let's see how it works. Alright, so this is idle, and let's give it some gas. To idle, and then the kill switch. All right, works well. Thank you.